In the year 2135, Earth had long basked in an era of peace. Following centuries of conflict, the nations of the world had finally put aside their differences. The Federation of Earth was born, a unified government where war was a relic of the past. Humanity had moved on, reaching for the stars, focusing its energies on exploration and technological advancement. Cities gleamed with clean energy, medical breakthroughs eradicated most diseases, and the population flourished in a world free from the scars of war. The military, once a cornerstone of human existence, now existed as a peacekeeping force, guarding against threats of a bygone era. But all of that was about to change. The first warning came in the form of a simple message. A holographic transmission appeared in the skies above every major city, its alien language incomprehensible at first. Panic spread like wildfire as the message was decoded, its meaning unmistakable. A vast fleet, one unlike any seen before, was approaching Earth. The alien race known as the Zekthar had made their intentions clear. They sought to conquer, enslave, and exploit. Earth was their next target, and they had little interest in negotiation. The leaders of the Federation were swift to act. An emergency council was convened, and the planet's finest military minds came together. Earth had not prepared for war in over a century, but now, faced with annihilation, they had no choice but to respond. Among the generals, diplomats, and strategists was Commander Jason Riker, a veteran officer of the Earth Defense Force, known for his cool-headedness and tactical brilliance. Riker stood on the balcony of the war room, gazing out at the city below. The calm of the evening was deceiving, as the people of Earth went about their lives, unaware of the looming threat. Riker's thoughts were interrupted by the soft hum of his earpiece, followed by the voice of his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Hayes. "Commander, we've received word from the Federation Council. They've activated the defense grid. Preparations are underway." Riker nodded grimly. "It won't be enough." Hayes hesitated, then spoke with a mixture of concern and resolve. "Do you think we're outmatched?" The commander didn't need to think long. The Zekthar don't negotiate. They take. They've done it before on countless worlds. And we have no idea what we're dealing with. Our forces aren't equipped for a full-scale invasion. Despite the growing weight of their situation, Riker's mind was clear. It was not fear that drove him, but a fierce determination to protect everything Earth had built. He had seen the devastation of war before, and he knew that even a single victory against an enemy like the Zekthar could mean the difference between humanity's survival and total destruction. The Zekthar arrived in Earth's orbit 3 days later. Their fleet was monstrous, an armada of hundreds of warships, their sleek, dark forms reflecting the light of the distant sun. A message was broadcast to every planet and moon in Earth's system, carried by a frequency that cut through even the most advanced communication systems. The aliens' leader, a towering figure known as Vraxer, spoke directly to Earth's people. His voice was cold, mechanical, and devoid of empathy. "Humans, your peace has made you weak. We have seen your world, your resources, and we will take what is ours. Submit to our will, and we will spare your lives. Resist, and your destruction will be swift." The message was simple, cruel, and unambiguous. There was no room for negotiation, no hint of mercy. The Zekthar's power was absolute. They had conquered countless planets in their quest for dominance, and now Earth was next. The Federation's leaders, though stunned, wasted no time in preparing a response. Military forces around the world were mobilized, but it was clear that humanity was unprepared for an enemy of such scale. Riker was tasked with assembling a team of Earth's most skilled soldiers, scientists, and strategists to devise a counteroffensive. The commander stood once more in the war room, now filled with reports and simulations of the incoming invasion. He looked at his team, experts in various fields, each chosen for their unique abilities. Alongside him was Lieutenant Hayes, a fierce, loyal officer who had trained under him for years. Together, they had faced the worst of what Earth's enemies could throw at them. But this was different. Hayes broke the silence, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "The Zekthar's technology is far superior. They've been preparing for this for centuries, while we've spent our time in peace. We're outgunned. Riker's eyes narrowed. We may be outgunned, but we're not outmatched. We've fought wars before, different enemies, different stakes, but the same human ingenuity. We have something they don't: the will to fight. As he spoke, Riker's mind was already racing through potential strategies. He had no illusions. The Zekthar would not simply let Earth fight back. But if they could create a few surprises, disrupt their supply lines, exploit weaknesses in their fleet, there might be a chance. It would require sacrifice, and it would require every ounce of human resilience. For the first time in days, Riker allowed himself a moment of hope. We fight on our terms. We make them underestimate us. As the Federation prepared its defenses, the Zekthar launched their first strike, an attack on Earth's outermost defense stations. It was swift, efficient, and devastating. Satellite systems fell one by one, and Earth's planetary shields, once thought invincible, cracked under the weight of the alien assault. The military response was immediate, but it was too little too late. In the span of a few hours, Earth's defenses had been breached. Riker's team scrambled to mount a counterattack, but the aliens had already advanced further than expected. The first battle was brutal. Riker and his forces were forced to retreat from Earth's outer defense perimeter, the air thick with the sound of alien weaponry and the screams of soldiers caught in the crossfire. The enemy's ships, capable of near-instantaneous re-entry, rained fire upon Earth's surface. But even in retreat, there was a fire in Riker's heart. The Zekthar had made their mistake. They had underestimated humanity. They had threatened Earth's peace, and now they would learn what it meant to face a people who would fight to the last breath. As Riker stood amidst the wreckage of Earth's defense systems, a thought burned in his mind. This war was just beginning, and if the Zekthar thought they could simply crush humanity, they were gravely mistaken. "Let's show them what we're made of," he muttered, his voice low but filled with resolve. "This is our world. We'll fight for it, no matter what." The days following the initial strike were a blur of chaos and confusion. Earth's military scrambled to respond, but the Zekthar were relentless. Their ships, sleek, powerful, and seemingly impervious to human weapons, descended like a storm. Cities once brimming with life now lay in ruins, firestorms tearing through the skyline as alien warships rained down hell. The Zekthar had come to conquer, and they were executing their plan with terrifying precision. Commander Riker had never seen anything like it. He'd fought in skirmishes, dealt with insurgencies, and planned for threats, but this was beyond anything Earth had faced. The Zekthar moved with military efficiency, overwhelming Earth's defenses in less than a week. Riker's team, once seen as the spearhead of Earth's resistance, was now spread thin, tasked with patching the holes in Earth's fragile defenses. They fought desperately, but every victory seemed hollow as the enemy pushed forward. Riker sat in the war room, the map of Earth's defenses now little more than a series of blinking red dots, each one representing a fallen city or breached base. The holographic screens flashed with incoming reports, each more dire than the last. There were casualties in the millions, and the Zekthar were showing no signs of slowing down. "Commander," Lieutenant Hayes called out, her voice tinged with frustration. "We can't keep up. Every time we push them back, they send in more forces. We're losing ground faster than we can replenish." Riker rubbed his temples, the weight of leadership pressing down on him. "We knew this would happen, Sarah. They don't just conquer. They break you down. They make you question whether it's worth fighting. But we can't give in to that." Hayes didn't respond immediately. She glanced at the tactical map, her expression hard. "We're fighting to hold on to a future that seems less certain by the hour." Riker understood, but he wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. They'd fought wars for less, and this one wasn't over. "Then we make our stand. We can't give them Earth without a fight." They gathered their forces, survivors from around the globe, each one broken in some way, but still determined. They weren't a military anymore. They were a resistance. And Riker, more than anyone, knew what was at stake. It wasn't just about Earth. It was about proving to the universe that humanity could stand against any threat. The Zekthar weren't just invaders, they were predators, and it was time to show them that humans weren't to be preyed upon. Their first real counterattack came at dawn. The Zekthar had pushed deep into Earth's atmosphere, targeting military hubs and resource centers. The Resistance's mission was clear: disable their fleet's command ship, the flagship Desolate, a massive vessel that served as both a command center and a weapon of mass destruction. To reach it, they had to breach the heavily guarded perimeter around Earth's atmosphere, a nearly impossible task. Riker, Hayes, and their team boarded a stealth ship, a modified Earth fighter craft, and launched into the sky. The ship's hull was lined with dampeners to shield them from detection, but Riker knew it was only a matter of time before the Zekthar noticed their movement. His heart raced in his chest as the distant sound of exploding shrapnel echoed through the ship's walls. Earth's military was holding the line, but Riker knew they had no illusions. They were buying time, nothing more. "Ready for this, Commander?" Hayes asked, her voice tight but full of purpose. Riker nodded, eyes fixed ahead. "Ready as we'll ever be. We hit them fast and hard. No hesitation. If we have a chance to end this war, we take it." The team's mission was a dangerous gamble. The Desolator had been designed to withstand even the most advanced human weapons. To destroy it, they needed to target its main power core, located deep within the ship's belly. But they would need to get close, closer than any human had ever gotten to a Zekthar warship before. The sky above them was dark with the smoke of battle as the Desolate loomed ahead, its dark hull gleaming ominously against the backdrop of Earth's atmosphere. The Resistance ship darted through the chaos, dodging laser fire and alien drones. Riker's pulse quickened. This was the first real opportunity to strike a blow against the invaders. "Brace for impact," Hayes shouted as they neared the flagship's defenses. The ship shook violently as blasts from the Zekthar's weapon systems struck their craft. Riker's hands tightened on the controls, guiding the ship through a series of evasive maneuvers. They made it past the outer defenses, but the real challenge lay ahead: the Zekthar's shield network. As they neared the Desolator, Riker saw the enemy's force field shimmer, pulsing with energy. The shields were impenetrable by Earth's standard weapons. But there was one weakness: a small gap in the shield network, a temporary glitch that Earth scientists had discovered. If they could make it through, they had a chance. 50 meters to shield gap, Riker muttered under his breath. He felt the sweat on his brow, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was the moment where the fate of Earth could be decided. Hayes worked quickly at the controls, coordinating with their team on the ground. "Preparing for penetration. Keep steady, Commander." The craft shot forward, and for one harrowing moment, everything seemed to slow down. Riker's eyes locked onto the shimmering gap in the shield. They were almost there. With a final burst of speed, they shot through the gap, the shields flickering as they passed. The Resistance ship shuddered violently as it entered the heart of the Desolator's defensive perimeter. But they were in. "Now we hit them," Riker said, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had only minutes before the Zekthar realized they had breached their defenses. The mission was simple: disable the flagship's main reactor, disrupt their power, and cripple their command systems. The rest of Earth's forces could finish the job. But just as Riker and his team set their charges, an alarm sounded. A loud, piercing shriek filled the cabin as an enemy fighter squadron broke through their shields and locked onto their position. The Zekthar had discovered them. "Commander!" Hayes yelled, urgency in her voice. "We're not going to make it out." But Riker didn't hesitate. "We finished the job. Do it now." With a final push, the charges were set. Riker knew they wouldn't survive the explosion, but Earth's resistance would have the chance they needed. As the last countdown ticked away, Riker shared one final glance with Hayes. Her eyes, filled with determination and resolve, told him everything he needed to know. They wouldn't give up, not while Earth still had a fighting chance. The explosion shook the Desolator, its massive hull cracking open like an egg. But as the Resistance ship was torn apart by the shockwave, Riker felt the first flicker of victory. The war had truly begun. The destruction of the Desolator had sent shockwaves through the Zekthar fleet. The flagship's core had ruptured, sending a violent burst of energy that disabled half of their remaining ships and crippled their command structure. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth's forces found themselves with a glimmer of hope. But that hope was fleeting, as the Zekthar quickly adapted, deploying new tactics and reinforcements that tested every last bit of humanity's resolve. Riker stood on the edge of Earth's final defense, what remained of the orbital station at Luna Base. His team, battered and weary, had fought on the front lines for days, each victory coming at a heavy cost. The Federation's remaining forces were on the brink of exhaustion, the last reserves stretched thin. Yet, despite the odds, there was a singular truth in Riker's mind. Humanity had not yet lost. Not if they could rally together for one last stand. Beside him, Lieutenant Hayes watched the sky, her expression one of steely determination. The desolate Earth's destruction had turned the tide, but the Zekthar were far from defeated. They were no longer just invaders. They were cornered, desperate, and unwilling to accept failure. "It won't be enough," Hayes said quietly, her gaze fixed on the dark mass of the remaining enemy fleet overhead. Riker turned to face her. His voice, rough from days without rest, carried a weight of finality. "It has to be. We're running out of time." Hayes nodded, as though understanding the unspoken truth between them. If Earth couldn't hold this position, there would be nothing left to fight for. No cities, no resources, no future. The Federation had gambled everything on this last defense. The last remnants of the Zekthar fleet were gathering for one final assault. They had regrouped, their ships now organized into a massive formation that dwarfed anything Earth had faced before. The desolate Earth's destruction had been a setback, but the Zekthar were ruthless, and they had more than enough strength to crush the resistance once and for all. Riker knew this was their final opportunity to end the war on their terms. "The final push," Riker muttered under his breath. Beside him, Captain Arlen, one of Earth's best pilots, adjusted the controls of the lunar defense cannon. "We've got one shot at this, Commander," he said, voice steady despite the tremble in his hands. "If we miss, we're finished." Riker took a deep breath, scanning the fleet above. The Zekthar were closing in too fast. If they didn't act now, they'd be overwhelmed. His mind raced through the strategies, calculating the odds. It wasn't a perfect plan, nothing ever was in war, but it was all they had. "We're going to take the fight to them," Riker said, looking around at the few remaining soldiers by his side. "Hayes, get the fighters prepped. Arlen, open fire the moment you have a shot. Everyone else, hold the line until we create the opening." The tension in the air was palpable as everyone took their positions. Riker had no illusions about the gravity of what they were about to attempt. The Zekthar had the numbers, the firepower, and the will to destroy Earth. Yet he held on to a single truth that had kept him going through the darkest days of the war. Earth fought not just for survival, but for everything they had built, every inch of progress, every dream, and every life that depended on them. The Zekthar fleet loomed large in the distance, their warships appearing like shadows in the cold vacuum of space. The Resistance forces, exhausted but unbroken, prepared for what would be the last battle of the war. Riker watched as the fighters lifted off from Luna Base, their engines roaring to life as they sped toward the oncoming fleet. "Command, we're in position," Hayes called over the comms. "Ready when you are?" "On my mark," Riker replied, his hand tight around the trigger of his control console. The seconds stretched into eternity as he waited for the right moment. The fleet moved in perfect formation, their massive ships bristling with weaponry. Riker knew they had to catch them off guard, disrupt their perfect coordination. They couldn't match the Zekthar in sheer force, but they could outthink them, outmaneuver them. "Now!" Riker shouted. Arlen fired, and the moon's defense cannon unleashed a burst of energy that cut through the cold void of space. The shot hit a critical point in the Zekthar formation, causing an explosion that sent ripples of shock throughout the enemy fleet. The resulting chaos was immediate. Ships began breaking formation, the disciplined lines fracturing under the unexpected assault. "Go, go, go!" Riker yelled, watching as Hayes and the remaining pilots rushed into the fray, their smaller, faster ships darting between the Zekthar's hulking vessels. The resistance forces took full advantage of the confusion, attacking with a fury that surprised even Riker. The Zekthar had underestimated humanity's resolve. But it wasn't enough yet. The remaining enemy warships regrouped quickly, their weapons charging for a counterstrike that would obliterate Earth's remaining defenses. Riker knew they had only minutes before the Zekthar coordinated their retaliation. They had to act faster, strike deeper. This was no longer about just holding the line. It was about pushing through, getting inside the enemy's defenses, and hitting them where it hurt most. "Keep them off us," Riker ordered Hayes. "We're going in?" The Zekthar had a weakness, something their arrogant command had overlooked. Their fleet, despite its strength, had no cohesive fallback plan in case of an internal disruption. The chaos in their ranks was their own undoing. Riker's team managed to slip past the wreckage of the Zekthar ships, penetrating the heart of their fleet's command center. From there, they struck with surgical precision, disabling key systems and taking out critical infrastructure. It wasn't just brute force. It was strategy, intelligence, and human ingenuity. Riker's plan was working. As the flagship of the Zekthar fleet began to crumble, Riker allowed himself a fleeting moment of satisfaction. But there was no time to savor victory. The final push had begun, and now they had to finish what they'd started. "Commander!" Hayes' voice came through, frantic. "We got company." Riker turned to see a fresh wave of enemy ships, their engines glowing as they surged toward Luna Base. The remaining fighters scrambled to intercept them, but the situation was dire. The base's defenses were failing, and Earth's last line of defense was at risk of being overrun. Riker stood tall, knowing there was only one way to secure victory. "Everyone, make a final push," he ordered, his voice cutting through the panic. "We end this now." The remaining pilots, soldiers, and Earth's fighters pushed forward with a final, coordinated strike. The Zekthar fleet was disorganized, their ships falling one by one as Riker's forces pressed their advantage. But the battle was not yet won. The enemy flagship's last-ditch efforts were desperate, and the final phase of the assault would require everything Earth's forces had left. In the midst of the fire and chaos, Riker's mind focused only on the goal. He felt the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. But this time, it wasn't just the survival of Earth at stake. It was about sending a message to the universe. Humanity would not bow to invaders. Humanity would not be conquered. As the final wave of enemy ships fell into disarray, the flagship of the Zekthar was struck, sending it into a fiery tailspin. The battle was over. The Zekthar were defeated. Riker's heart pounded in his chest, but it wasn't from fear. It was from the realization that, against all odds, they had done it. The war had ended, and Earth had prevailed. But as Riker looked out over the shattered remnants of the Zekthar fleet, he knew that peace would never come easily. It had been hard-won, and it would require vigilance to maintain. But for now, humanity had won. The Earth, once thought to be vulnerable, had become a beacon of resistance in a galaxy full of predators. And in that victory, Riker saw the future of a united Earth, a future where they would stand, not just for survival, but for strength.